Okay, perfect. So the debate on whether Israel has been committing genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza is effectively over. There's by now broad consensus that the answer is yes. Israel's genocidal violence was triggered by Hamas' attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. On this day, Hamas and other armed Palestinian groups committed war crimes. Besides this genocide, there are several other genocides that unfolded in the aftermath of armed attacks, uprisings, or episodes of mass violence. Examples include the Herero-Nama and the Srebrenica genocides. Since the beginning of Israel's offensive, there have been warnings of genocide and extensive evidence of atrocity crimes. Therefore, this genocide has also been called the first live-streamed genocide. Yet, the international community, particularly Western states, has disregarded international law and has failed to prevent and punish the genocide against the Palestinians, which Francesca Albanese has coined collective crime. So in the following, I'll start out by describing the current situation, or kind of what happened in Gaza. I'll then turn to Israel's conduct and then discuss the question of Germany's role in the ongoing genocide. According to the latest OCHA snapshot report, there are 71,551 fatalities. A recent study by Gomez, Ugarte, and co-authors estimates over 100,000 direct deaths by October 25, and a drop in life expectancy by over 47%, or 36 years in 2024. The number of direct and indirect deaths is expected to be even much higher. Many victims cannot be identified, and indirect fatalities are estimated to be 3 to 15 times higher based on kind of other such mass atrocities. This is due to malnutrition and undernourishment, a largely destroyed healthcare system in Gaza, the lack of treatment for chronic diseases such as diabetes and cancer, contaminated water, destruction of the drinking water supply, destruction of the sewage system, lack of electricity, the continued blocking of goods such as hygiene products and medicines, and the spread of infectious diseases. A report from the UN Human Rights Office covering the first 6 months of Israel's onslaught reveals that 70% of the fatalities verified were children and women. The report also shows that Israel killed women and men in roughly equal numbers, in contrast also to previous escalations. In contrast also to previous escalations in May 2021 and in 2014. Other sources, including the IDF database, suggest that the share of civilians, so children, women, and men, is over 80% or 90%. Thousands of children have lost one or more limbs, such that Gaza has the highest number of amputated children per capita in the world. Over 58,000 children have lost one or both parents, including children classified as WCNSF, wounded child, no surviving family. By late 2024, women were 3 times more likely to die in childbirth and 3 times more likely to miscarry compared with pre-war levels, while newborn death also increased. 579 aid workers have been killed, some in the line of duty. Over 1,700 health workers have been killed, and health personnel has been detained, including hospital directors. 255 journalists and media workers have been killed, with 2024 and 2025 being the deadliest year for journalists worldwide, the majority killed by the Israeli military. Most of the infrastructure has been partially or completely destroyed, 93% of schools and all 12 universities, libraries, historical sites, the Gaza Central Archives, mosques, and churches. By April 24, so within the first 6-7 months of the offensive, Israel had dropped an estimated total of 70,000 tons of explosive on Gaza, an area slightly larger than Dresden or Munich, exceeding the bombing of Dresden, Hamburg, and London during World War II. As a result, many neighborhoods have been entirely flattened. The massive destruction is also evident from satellite data. According to ONOSAT damage assessments, by October 2025, approximately 81% of all structures in the Gaza Strip were damaged. Also, using satellite data, forensic architecture has compiled a comprehensive database on the destruction of different types of infrastructure as well as of agricultural and water resources, showing that most of the cropland, greenhouses, and water facilities have also been damaged or destroyed. In addition, most of the livestock, cattle, goats, etc. have died or perished, and Palestinian access to the sea is denied by Israel. This has contributed to the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. Right at the beginning of its campaign in October 23, Israel imposed a full blockade on Gaza. Since then, Israel lifted at times the blockade partially. As a consequence of the blockade, the number of people in Gaza classified by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, IPC, in 4 emergency and 5 catastrophe is, according to Alex Deval, extraordinary. The graph here illustrates this by showing the number of people affected on the x-axis and the share of the population IPC5 on the y-axis for different points in time in Gaza and all other cases between 2014 and late 2024, plus Somalia in 2011. The latest IPC projection of acute food security for December 25 until April 26 shows that all areas are classified in emergency, all with risk of famine. Israel continues to block humanitarian aid, and international organizations and doctors remain barred from entering Gaza. Similarly, economic indicators document a massive decline in well-being. According to the UNCTAD report from November 25, GDP per capita has plummeted to $161, among the lowest in the world. The Human Development Index, which additionally considers education and health indicators, suggests that in Gaza over 69 years of human development have already been lost. Finally, nighttime light luminosity shows that across Gaza there has been a massive reduction in economic and human activity, and that by May 25, Gaza was completely dark. As there is broad consensus by now that Israel has committed and continues to commit genocide, I will keep this section relatively short. Leading Israeli politicians have incited and continue to incite violence and have made genocidal statements, suggesting early on that the offensive is about annihilation, ethnic cleansing, and annexation. At the same time, various newspaper reports revealed that from the start Netanyahu was not interested in a ceasefire and hostage deal. It is not just the Israeli government, however. There is broad support for ethnic cleansing and atrocity crimes in Israeli society. 82% of Jewish Israelis support ethnic cleansing of Gazans, 56% support ethnic cleansing of Israeli Arabs, 47% support killing all Gazans in cities captured by the IDF. 79% of Jewish Israelis are not troubled by the famine in Gaza. According to its own figures, Israel dropped 6,000 bombs on Gaza in the first 6 days of the offensive alone, killing more than 1,400 people. Right from the start of its offensive, Israel used hunger as a weapon of war. On October 15, 2023, over 800 scholars and practitioners of international law, conflict studies, and genocide studies warned of a genocide against the Palestinian people. In November 23, UN experts called on the international community to prevent genocide. And in December 23, the Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention classified Israel's actions in Gaza as genocide. Who has collected, verified, and analyzed evidence of Israeli atrocity crimes? First and foremost, Palestinian journalists, many of whom have been killed by Israel. And until now, or to this day, Israel continues to bar international journalists from entering Gaza. There are countless images and videos that have been posted on social media by Israeli soldiers. There are numerous investigative reports on Israel's campaign, such as on the use of AI for targeting bombing and the extensive use of 2,000-pound bombs and so-called dump bombs, as well as on the torture and ill-treatment of Palestinians in Israeli prisons. The International Court of Justice found in January 24 that there is a real and imminent risk that Israel's actions amount to genocide. It ordered provisional measures in January, March, and May 2024. There is also the ICJ advisory opinion on the illegality of the entire Israeli occupation, that is, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza, and the ICJ advisory opinion on the obligations of Israel in relation to the presence and activities of the UN, other international organizations, and third states in and in relation to the occupied Palestinian territory. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has issued arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant, amongst others, because the chamber considered that there are reasonable grounds to believe that both individuals intentionally and knowingly deprived the civilian population in Gaza of objects indispensable to their survival, including food, water, medicine, and medical supplies, as well as fuel and electricity, from at least 8 October 23 to 20 May 24. There are the reports by UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, among them an anatomy of genocide and genocide as colonial erasure, and by the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. In its latest report from September 25, the Commission concluded that, quote, Israel bears responsibility for the failure to prevent genocide, the commission of genocide, and the failure to punish genocide against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Further, Israel has committed and is continuing to commit genocide by engaging not only in one, but in the following 4 out of 5 genocidal acts with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, the Palestinians in Gaza. 1, killing members of the group. 2, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. 3, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. And 4, imposing measures intended to prevent birth within the group. The analysis the report also raises serious concern that the specific intent to destroy the Palestinians as a whole has extended to the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory, that is, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. The report thereby confirms earlier analysis from Palestinian, Israeli, and international human rights organizations, concluding that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, some of which are listed on this slide. There are numerous reports and statements by humanitarian organizations. For example, the statement by 38 humanitarian organizations in October 24, an urgent statement on northern Gaza being erased and that global leaders must act now to end Israel's atrocities. There are also numerous reports, interviews, and open letters by international health or with international health professionals who worked in Gaza. Finally, all renowned Holocaust and genocide scholars, including Israeli and Jewish, consider Israel's conduct to be genocide. What role has Germany been playing in Israel's genocide against the Palestinians? Germany is not only historically and ethically, but also legally obliged to prevent and punish atrocity crimes. As a state party to the UN Genocide Convention, as a state party to the Rome Statute of the ICC. Importantly, the focus is on prevention. So the ICJ says in a report, quote, a state's obligation to prevent and the corresponding duty to act arise at the instant that the state learns of or should normally have learned of the existence of a serious risk that genocide will be committed. With its close political, economic, scientific, and social ties to Israel, Germany wields considerable influence and therefore bears a special responsibility. Yet, and despite incitement to genocide by prominent Israeli figures, Israel's immediate use of starvation as a weapon of war, early warnings of genocide, and the ICJ decisions and provisional measures, Germany decided to continue supporting Israel, a policy that it has maintained until today. In her latest report, UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese concludes that, quote, the ongoing genocide in Gaza is a collective crime sustained by the complicity of influential third states that have enabled long-standing systematic violations of international law by Israel. She distinguishes the following 4 types or sectors of support: diplomatic, humanitarian, military, and economic. In the following, I will discuss Germany's role regarding each of these 4 sectors or types. First, diplomatic and political actions and ideological support, as this is kind of the basis for the other sectors or types of support. The German government and much of Germany's political, academic, cultural, and media elite has partially or fully embraced the official Israeli narrative of self-defense, a claim that is legally incorrect, of Israeli security, depicting Palestinian civilians as human shields or Hamas terrorists and recasting Israel's onslaught as a battle of civilization against barbarism. It has described the conflict as complex, engaged in both sadism, and erroneously suggested that Hamas was primarily responsible for the situation in Gaza. It has denied Israeli atrocity crimes and has hence neither condemned nor punished them, and it contributed to the spread of false information. Thereby, the German government and other actors contributed to legitimizing and normalizing Israel's genocidal campaign. To this day, the German government has essentially ignored the ICJ's rulings and advisory opinion. In January 24, after the ICJ's decision, the German government dismissed South Africa's complaint before the ICJ as unfounded. Quote, the accusation is completely baseless. The previous German government tried to delay the issuance of the ICC's arrest warrants, while members of the current government, including the German Chancellor, have met with Netanyahu and high-ranking Israeli officials and ministers and have publicly stated that they would not arrest Netanyahu should he visit Germany. Because of its continued denial of the genocide, the German government, the previous one and the current one, has not been willing to use the instruments that are employed in similar situations, such as sanctions, a full arms embargo, and UN peacekeeping missions. It has also contributed to the delegitimization of the ICC and ICJ and undermined international law. Also, unlike Russia, Israel has not been excluded from FIFA or international events such as the Eurovision Song Contest. Second, humanitarian support. Germany, along with other Western countries, has done little against Israel's deliberate and systematic destruction of the humanitarian system, such as the partial or full blockade of Gaza, the direct bombing of UNRWA warehouses, food distribution sites, schools, and clinics, the killing of hundreds of personnel, defamation campaigns against UNRWA, the banning of UNRWA from operating within Israel, and recently Israel's banning of 37 aid organizations from operating in Palestine. Germany also paused its UNRWA funding following Israel's unsubstantiated claims about Hamas infiltration of UNRWA. Overall, Germany thereby contributed to creating conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of Palestinians as a group. Third, military support. Germany is the second largest supplier of arms. According to CIPRI, approximately 1/3 of all Israeli arms imports in the years 2019 to 2023 and 2020 to 24 came from Germany. Compared to 2022, German arms exports increased more than tenfold in 2023, with most export permits granted after October 7. Arms exports have continued since January 24, albeit with fluctuating intensity. Between October 7, 23 and September 25, Germany granted export licenses worth around 550 million euros. In addition to arms exports, indirect transfers have been made by supplying components for arms used by Israel. Fourth, economic and trade relations. Through trade with Israel, the government and corporate entities have not only provided the military, but also the financial and technical means for Israel's illegal occupation and ongoing genocide. The EU is Israel's most important trading partner, with Germany having increased its trade with Israel during the genocide. The German government has expanded its cooperation with Israel, purchasing weapons and military, cyber, and internal security technologies. In addition, the EU has provided significant support to Israeli science since 2021 through the Horizon Europe research program, and so have German funding bodies such as the DFG and DAAD. Finally, Germany voted against launching a review of the EU-Israel Association Agreement and later on against its suspension. To conclude, I think I went a bit faster than I expected. The German government has made Germany complicit in the Palestinian genocide by or through its diplomatic, humanitarian, military, and economic support for Israel, disregarding international law and thereby also its own constitution. This includes the prevention of political and economic instruments used in similar situations, such as sanctions, a comprehensive arms embargo, and UN peacekeeping missions. In September 2024, the footnote on this slide, UN experts called on states to comply with the ICJ's rulings and implement a range of measures that have largely or fully been ignored by Germany. While the focus of this talk has been on the German government and its complicity in the ongoing Palestinian genocide, I'd like to add two kind of final remarks. Remark one, Germany's complicity in the genocide has been accompanied by an increase in the repression and silencing of critical voices and the criminalization of protesters eroding fundamental rights. As part of this, the Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution classified a number of, quote, BDS-affiliated groups, as well as groups that, quote, support the movement and its demands as, quote, confirmed extremist endeavors. These include the Jewish Voice for a Just Peace in the Middle East and Palestine Speaks. Although this, the overall repression and silencing of critical voices and the erosion of fundamental rights has received limited attention in Germany by the German media, international actors have taken note. In June 25, the Council of Europe Commissioner for Human Rights sent a letter to Interior Minister Dobrindt on restrictions to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. In October 25, UN experts urged Germany to halt criminalization and police violence against Palestinian solidarity activism. And in December 25, Civicus Monitor downgraded Germany's civic space to, quote, obstructed. Second, while the focus of this talk has been the German government, Germany's complicity in Israel's genocide against the Palestinians is not only the result of government failure. Genocide denial is widespread among the media, cultural, political, and academic elite and has kind of contributed to Germany's complicity. It often operates alongside anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Muslim sentiment and racism. In addition to genocide denial, there seems to be widespread denial of Germany's role. In a survey last August, only 34% of survey respondents considered Germany to be partly responsible for the atrocity crimes committed by Israel in Gaza. Just recently, in January, so this month, the Lemkin Institute issued a statement on the role of civil society organizations in sustaining German genocide denial. It notes that, quote, Germany's largest media outlets have abandoned their journalistic responsibilities, threatening critical voices and effectively becoming the Israeli government's most loyal mouthpiece. Also, quote, genocide denial in Germany is actively produced and institutionalized through a network of Israeli-aligned think tanks, civil society actors, and parliamentary access points that together translate genocide denial into legitimate, respectable, policy-relevant, quote, expertise. In their statement, the Lemkin Institute discusses several examples. Among the groups mentioned are the European Leadership Network, ELNET, and the German Israeli Society, DIG. Also, by and large, German universities and organizations such as the DAD, the DFG, and the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation have failed to reconcile their stated commitments with their institutional practices. While publicly affirming commitments to human rights, international law, and academic freedom, they have remained silent on or even denied the Palestinian genocide and scholasticide, while maintaining business as usual relations to Israeli institutions. There's been a general unwillingness to meaningfully engage with Israel's illegal occupation, apartheid, and genocide, despite due diligence obligations as state institutions, and a lack of empathy and solidarity for those affected. At the same time, university leaderships have often yielded to the influence of political interest groups, undermining the fight against actual anti-Semitism and academic freedom. They have generally failed to confront the political instrumentalization of anti-Semitism, in which some anti-Semitism commissioners are implicated, and closely connected networks such as the Netzwerk Jüdischer Hochschullehrende, Tikva Institute, and DIG claim representative authority and have deployed anti-Semitism allegations to discredit and silence opposing political views. In turn, over the past 2.5 years, rooms have been cancelled, speakers have been disinvited, and prizes have been withdrawn. In 2025, Germany dropped out of the top tier of the Academic Freedom Index, and this has likely been one of the reasons. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Binzel. Thank you for giving us an overview on why this event today is necessary, why we need to discuss our memory culture and our continuous support for these atrocities that you've just described. We have now time for Q&A. We would give preference to the speakers on the panel. If you have a question, then just please raise your hand and we can give you the opportunity to ask it directly to Professor Christine Binzel. In my case, I would start off with a question. I would be interested in the economics of the new Gaza plan. Trump at Davos has revealed his Board of Peace, so-called Board of Peace, which is now apparently more expansive than just focusing on Gaza in particular in its rebuilding efforts, but does not include any voices, representatives from Palestine itself, but is more an international consortium of investors with economic interests in the region. So I would be interested in the economic implications. Have you looked at this already? What kind of investment will be expected? And what will be the economic consequences of such an international effort that has no basis in the traditional system of international law?
Good question. So I guess because of your last remark that it has no kind of basis in international law, I'm actually not willing to engage with it in a sense. So I feel like, this is horrendous, and I don't want to make an analysis of something that lacks any basis of, or is kind of not based on international law and human rights. So I haven't, to be honest, looked further into this. I'm just appalled by what is happening, by this peace board, by all the terms being used, by the normalization of what is happening, by the idea of building a new Gaza on the corpses of on the place where genocide is still taking place. I mean, this is just bizarre, and the genocide isn't even over. So, I think to me this is I don't know. It's just not understandable why this is all happening and why we're allowing this to happen, especially our governments. But also more broadly, kind of the media is kind of not discussing it appropriately, etc. So I don't even want to think about kind of economic aspects here in a sense. It's not a very I don't know, good answer, I guess.
Perfectly understandable, yes. First comes the right, and then we can make a discussion about the economic implication.
Yeah.
I agree. Yes, Amos, please.
Thank you for this. I don't know, a heartbreaking concentration of all this information. I have a comment and a very short comment and a very short question. A comment is one aspect that I think also should be mentioned is the torture and the which is an humiliation, dehumanization. More than 100 detainees that were killed. All this is part, an essential part of what's going on and an indication of what is actually it's all about. And the second thing is, my question is, even according to your surveys, there's a gap between the public opinion and the government. Do you think public opinion can influence, even in a minor way, German policies, or those are two completely disconnected spheres, particularly on this topic?
Yeah, good question. So on the first, I fully agree, and I think I probably should have kind of added this in the presentation. I only mentioned it when I talked about the investigative reports, but it's kind of I fully agree that this is part of or reflects also the kind of overall strategy and kind of intent. On the second. I'm not sure. I mean, there are all these surveys that show that about 2/3 of Germans see that atrocity crimes are happening or even viewed as a genocide. I'm still not sure whether we can really trust these survey responses. That's one, because if it was the case, then it's a bit surprising that there's so little resistance or protest within German society against what is happening. So maybe this is some interview demand effects that people kind of think that that's the right way to answer it. But I'm not sure. But it's a bit, to me, it's a bit surprising that so many kind of appear to see what is happening, but then we see little protests or little kind of actions. And then the question of public opinion and how far it could affect the government. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure that they know these results, these survey results, and they continue that way. And I think ideology just plays an important role. So I think the dehumanization that has taken place together with kind of general anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, anti-Muslim sentiment kind of dominates. So I think that's why there has been little response also to these surveys. So I think they're fully aware of them, but I think they're just very much convinced of what they're doing. But it's I mean, but I mean, these are guesses, right? I mean, if we all knew better, I guess it would be easier to influence policy. But I do believe, and also, we're talking also to members of the parliament, or colleagues have done so, and to the political foundations. I mean, there are people who are well informed, people who know what is happening, who call it a genocide, and they're unable to influence or to change the views of their fellow party colleagues and those in power. So I don't think it's an information thing. I think it's kind of the consequence of not just the last 2.5 years, but kind of many years of a certain framing and narrative of how to think about the conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, right? So I think that's what we're seeing, and that's why it's so hard to change, right? Because it's kind of ideology and a certain narrative that just seems to be very strong, and I think we haven't found a way to really kind of unpack it or challenge that narrative among these people in order to kind of change also their views and policies.
So, thank you also from my side for your great presentation. We have some questions also from participants. The first question that was asked is, are Germany's actions making the entire European Union complicit? Because other countries are limited in their actions by the division of powers between the nation state and the European Union. So even if they would like to do more, are they like the constraints of the European Union the power imbalances? So maybe if you would like to
Yeah.
answer that.
I mean, so I think in part, yes. So when we look at the EU-Israel Association Agreement, Germany was kind of one reason why it wasn't suspended. So I think, and therefore, I also think this is an important point next to kind of the military support is I think the political support, because I think they prevented all kinds of measures that would have otherwise been taken. On the other hand, I mean, states are free to do what they want to do. So Spain, Ireland, and so on want to take actions or measures, and in part they have done so, they can do so. So I think yes. So I think for kind of meaningful interventions in kind of from the as regards the EU as institution, and for example the Horizon Europe program, research program, there of course it's important. So other states are kind of limited in what they can do. On other measures, they probably, or I guess they have at least some ways of nevertheless implementing certain measures without having to wait for the EU. But it's also, I think, not just Germany within the EU. I mean, sure, Germany is an important power, but then there are also, I think if there had been a stronger consensus maybe among all the rest, it would have been also kind of more difficult for Germany to kind of to play its role in kind of preventing all kinds of measures. But yes, Germany, I think, is one of the reasons why we haven't seen not more action. And both, I think it's not just at the EU level, but it's also at the international level, right? Where Germany has been able to influence policy. And also, I think it's kind of, it's not just preventing measures, but it's also providing this ideological support and kind of supporting this narrative, supporting a certain or using a certain phrasing, not talking about war crimes and crimes against humanity or genocide or ethnic cleansing. So all this kind of has helped to keep this narrative, which is just totally detached from reality. But that then makes it difficult for people, or we've seen it, and I think that has been kind of shocking to many, or at least to me, that in Germany, once the government kind of fails and kind of reproduces this kind of narrative or kind of certain views and does not call it a war crime, even though it's really obvious that it's a war crime, that it kind of, it leads to many other actors kind of not speaking out. So, I mean, the media, but also kind of other actors have just remained silent. And I think that's still something to understand, like what's been happening. So, so therefore, I think it's not just the German government who has been kind of caught in this kind of narrative or ideology, but at least partially many it seems to resonate to some extent, that they kind of, I mean, as an institute, right, media has kind of their journalistic standards, essentially. But I think that's something that I wouldn't have expected, but that's also different compared to, say, Russia, Ukraine, where the German government has used or has kind of spoken more clearly than in this case here.
Okay, thank you. And there's also another question. So first, the viewer wants to thank you for the great documentation of facts, and is saying that their problem with this is that the facts are all known, but that the actual politics don't really take these facts, and so that they don't really make a difference, and asks, as an academic, what can we do in a post-factual world society to support basic human rights?
all the tough questions. Yeah, so I think, I mean, I focus at the end on kind of university leaderships and kind of universities as institutions, but as Paul also said at the beginning, I think we academics have done a very bad job, and it's also, we're also to blame for what we're in, or for having, or for Germany being complicit. And if we all had spoken out more and stronger, universities, leaderships had also taken perhaps at least a different position. But we're very few still, unfortunately. And then, I mean, so that's one. So I think it's also that part of academia hasn't spoken out, and the question is why they haven't done so. I don't think it's just about fear of speaking out. The other thing is that certain groups and people are very good organized, and I think that's the other part that we probably have to, and I think many are working on, to improve that we have a voice. So, for example, here the lawyers kind of also organize themselves, right? There are other groups who have popped up in the last 2.5 years in order to be able to influence and to provide to have a say. And I think with all this information and fake news and etc., I think that will probably become more and more important, that because it will be maybe it can help. I don't know. I mean, it's difficult or hard to say, but I think that's one thing perhaps we can also improve on and need to work more. But it's hard, right? So certain groups are just funded very well and organized very well, and that makes it difficult to kind of provide a strong enough kind of counterpart to be taken serious by university leaderships, etc. So I think, and it requires that university leaderships and also others, kind of political figures, are open to that. And I mean, that's why I said also this unwillingness to engage, that's really something that has bothered me. So, I mean, it's not just that people it's not that people have, or whether it's politicians or others, have dealt with it and come to a different conclusion. Then we could discuss, right? But there is no discussion. There is kind of an unwillingness to engage by a large part of society, of the elite, with this topic. And that makes it also so difficult. So, I don't know if I answered that well, but I don't have a good answer here. I think it's something we need to kind of work on and find out and hopefully do better.